The G20 just dropped a bombshell, and the US is listening. Something big just happened, and almost no one is talking about it. Not the influencers, not the mainstream media, not even most crypto insiders. But this move, it just shifted the entire timeline for global financial disruption. The G20 group, that includes the US, EU, China, India, and every other economic superpower, has issued a non-negotiable mandate. The world's outdated, fragmented cross-border payment systems must be overhauled, not eventually, not if it's convenient by 2027 and with full-scale transformation by 2030. And the G20 didn't mince words. Their goals are laser-focused. Cross-border payments must become instant, not delayed by days. Costs must drop to near zero, not $30 wire fees or 7% remittance tolls. Transparency must become the default. No more guessing where money went. And most importantly, access must be universal. Even in regions banks don't touch, this isn't a crypto fantasy. This is a global policy blueprint, and it's being treated like law by the world's biggest economies. So here's the twist: while everyone else is watching Bitcoin ETF charts or debating meme coin cycles, the US just responded to the G20's demands with a clear message of its own. On January 14th, the US Faster Payments Council, a body made up of Federal Reserve reps, major banks, fintech leaders, and real decision makers, quietly released a confidential strategic report. It outlines how the US plans to meet these G20 goals, and buried in that report is a bombshell that could rewrite the future of crypto too. Blockchain networks were cited by, named not hypothetically, not as future considerations, but as active infrastructure partners ready to help meet these global benchmarks. Those two names, Ripple XRP and Stellar XLM, let that hit for a second. Out of thousands of crypto projects, DeFi coins, Layer 1's EVM clones, L2 chains, hype trains. The only two blockchains specifically acknowledged in a US strategic framework tied to global payment reform were Ripple and Stellar. They weren't mentioned in passing. They were highlighted as viable solutions to one of the G20's top priorities, modernizing cross-border payment rails. And here's what most people miss. This kind of mention doesn't happen unless the infrastructure is already in place. Ripplet is live. Stellar rails are operational. These aren't startups. They're live financial infrastructure trusted by banks, governments, and global remittance giants. And now they've been quietly tapped by the US to help meet a global mandate. It's easy to miss. It's not flashy, but this is the kind of quiet regulatory alignment that precedes major institutional adoption. And when that happens, liquidity follows. And when liquidity follows, utility price always catches up. Subscribe right now if you haven't already, because this is how you get ahead of the next wave, by tracking what the institutions are actually doing, not what crypto Twitter's yelling about. Ripple and Stellar aren't just being noticed. They're being positioned. And what comes next might redefine the entire crypto narrative heading into 2026. Ripple and Stellar, the only chains named in a US government-endorsed strategy. Let's get one thing straight. This isn't some speculative blog post or opinion piece. The US Faster Payments Council just quietly co-signed a strategy that could change everything for two specific crypto projects. Ripple and Stellar, and the council is no lightweight. We're talking about a coalition that includes the Federal Reserve, the clearinghouse JP Morgan, Visa, MasterCard, Wells Fargo, and a lineup of fintechs with real skin in the payments game. These aren't crypto influencers. These are the people who actually run the plumbing of America's financial system. So when they publish a report recommending how to meet the G20's aggressive goals for faster, cheaper, and more transparent cross-border payments, you pay attention. And what's in that report is seismic, a clear endorsement of blockchain-based payment infrastructure, specifically citing Ripple and Stellar as examples of networks that already meet key global requirements, but it gets even more specific. The report zeroes in on a critical technological transition: the global adoption of ISO 2022, a new international messaging standard that will soon become the language of money worldwide. ISO 2022 isn't a buzzword, it's a global shift. Banks, central banks, and financial networks from Europe to Asia are moving toward it. Why? Because it allows payments to carry more data, richer context, and standardized formatting, making international payments faster to reconcile and more transparent from end to end. And here's the kicker. Ripple and Stellar are already ISO 20022 compliant. That's not a small detail. It's a massive head start, while legacy systems like Swift are struggling to retrofit their infrastructure to handle this upgrade. Ripple and Stellar were built with this in mind. They're already speaking the language of next-gen finance. That's why they're at the top of the list. But the report goes deeper than just compliance. It lays out explicit recommendations for U.S. payment providers such as FedNow and the clearinghouse's RTP system to collaborate with blockchain-native firms that are capable of providing 247 settlement capability, instant transaction finality, significant reduction in intermediary costs, interoperability across borders and currencies. In other words, they want real-time, around-the-clock, frictionless payment rails, and Ripple and Stellar are already operating in that exact framework. Now think about that for a moment. These two platforms aren't being considered because they're trendy or have strong communities. They're not here because of hype cycles or token pumps. They're here because they're battle tested. They've been integrated by banks, used by remittance companies, tested by governments, and they continue to handle real-world cross-border payments at scale, not just test in Net's production level throughput. Ripple, for instance, is used by banks and payment providers in over 55 countries. Stellar is powering payment corridors from Latin America to Africa with MoneyGram and dozens of fintechs building directly on its rails. This is utility at scale, and now that utility is being recognized at the highest levels of U.S. financial infrastructure when a government-backed body says that Ripple and Stellar should be part of the strategy to fulfill G20 global mandates. You better believe that isn't accidental. That's not just an endorsement, it's an institutional green light. And here's the game changer. This isn't the kind of development that makes headlines. It doesn't come with fireworks or airdrops. It happens behind closed doors until suddenly it doesn't. By the time the public catches on, Ripple and Stellar will already be woven into the core of global payment systems. So let this sink in. The US just acknowledged that Ripple and Stellar have the architecture, the compliance, and the real-world integrations to meet global policy mandates. This isn't crypto, this is infrastructure. And it's about to be deployed at a scale that no meme coin can touch. Blockchain is no longer optional. It's the backbone of global payment reform. Let's be blunt, we've crossed a point of no return for more than a decade. Governments and regulators looked at blockchain like it was some fringe tech, a science experiment best left to the crypto brothers. But now the tide has turned quietly, methodically, and with full institutional backing, blockchain has been moved from the sidelines to the center stage of global finance. And this confidential U.S. Faster Payments Council report proves it. The report doesn't just mention blockchain in passing, it spells out in no uncertain terms that to meet the G20's cross-border payment goals, blockchain, and more specifically, Ripple and Stellar's distributed ledger technologies, TS, are no longer optional. They are mission-critical infrastructure. Let's talk about why traditional rails are breaking down legacy systems like Swift were never built for speed, transparency, or low cost. They were built for an era when waiting 3 days for a wire transfer and paying $30 in fees made sense in today's world of real-time digital commerce. That's not just outdated, it's a liability. That's where Ripple and Stellar come in, not as disruptors, but as upgraders. Cost efficiency that's measurable, Ripple's on-demand liquidity. ODL isn't theory, it's live in dozens of corridors, and the results are jaw-dropping. Partners report over 60% reductions in transaction costs by eliminating the need for pre-funded Nostro accounts. That's not a slight improvement. That's a restructuring of the financial plumbing. This is what it looks like when blockchain replaces multiple middlemen with a single trustless transaction layer. Speed that's near instant. Stellar's network doesn't just move money faster, it obliterates traditional timelines with average transaction finality. In under 5 seconds, it makes Swift's 2 to 5 day settlement window look like dial-up internet in a fiber optic world. This isn't just faster, it unlocks entirely new models for global commerce, payroll, microfinance, and real-time remittance financial access for the unbanked. Let's talk about something no legacy system has ever prioritized: Inclusion Stellar was built from day one for financial access. It powers remittances and payments in regions where traditional banks don't even operate, from rural Latin America to war-torn regions in Africa. It's not waiting for permission from banks, it's building systems that empower people directly through mobile access, stable coins, and low-cost on-ramps. This is financial infrastructure that works where it's needed most transparency for the regulatory age in the post-2020 era of compliance crackdowns. Transparency isn't optional. Regulators want traceability, accountability, and auditability. Baked into every transaction, Ripple and Stellar deliver exactly that. Their ledgers are public, immutable, and easily integrated with compliance frameworks like AML and KYC legacy systems. Their black box is filled with intermediaries and reconciliations. That's a nightmare. Regulators are trying to end ISO 20002 plus DT equals the future of money. Now here's where it all clicks into place. Ripple and Stellar are already ISO 20002 compliant, meaning they're not just fast, they're speaking the same financial language as central banks, commercial banks, and international payment networks. This isn't crypto trying to force its way into the traditional world. It's blockchain already meeting the gold standard that institutions are migrating toward. You want real-time global interoperability across legacy finance, fintech, and decentralized rails. This is it. Right here, Ripple and Stellar are already fluent. Direct coordination is coming, and the report doesn't mince words about what comes next. To hit the G20's 2027 milestone, the US will need direct collaboration between domestic payment providers like FedNow and RTP and blockchain native networks like Ripple and Stellar. This means interlinking legacy and decentralized infrastructure into a single seamless experience. This isn't a roadmap or a speculative white paper. This is the strategic playbook. And guess what? Ripple and Stellar are already executing. They've got the partnerships, they've got the payment corridors, they've got the liquidity systems, the stablecoin rails, the remittance apps, and the institutional pilots running today. Let that settle in. The government just said the quiet part out loud. Blockchain is not the future anymore. It's the present. The Ripple and Stellar trifecta, speed, compliance, and real-world traction. Let's talk traction. Because at this stage, talk is cheap. What really matters is who's actually building, who's actually partnering, and who's actually live. Ripple, the infrastructure layer, no one saw coming. Ripple isn't some new kid on the block. Since 2015, it's been onboarding real financial institutions, not just running pilot programs for headlines. Let's break down what that looks like. In the real world, SBI Remit in Japan uses Ripple for real-time payments to the Philippines and Latin America. Ripple powers corridors between Brazil and Mexico, two of the largest remittance markets on the continent. In the Middle East, Ripplet enables faster, cheaper cross-border payments where banking costs traditionally destroy value. And the game changed completely when Ripple acquired Hidden Road, a global prime brokerage that now connects Ripple to institutional liquidity pipes across FX crypto and cross-asset classes that move vaulted Ripple into traditional finance's inner circle. They're not just a payment network anymore. They're becoming the plumbing of global capital movement, Stellar ground level, utility. At scale, on the other end of the spectrum, Stellar has been laser focused on inclusion and execution. This isn't a chain trying to win over Wall Street. This is a chain building where the traditional system gave up money. Gram integration turned Stellar into a stable coin cash and cash out rail for over 180 countries. Circle USDC is native on Stellar, giving users globally a compliant dollar-pegged asset for everyday payments. IBM's WorldWire project leveraged Stellar to launch cross-border payment pilots with central banks and commercial institutions during wartime. The Ukrainian government leveraged Stellar's foundation to build blockchain-based aid distribution tools. Live, not theoretical. This is boots on the ground blockchain, the trifecta, speed, compliance, liquidity. Now here's where both Ripple and Stellar leave everyone else behind. They aren't just chains that can process fast transactions. They offer 3 non-negotiables every payment system needs to survive in the next decade. 24/7 settlement legacy rails run on Bankers, Hours, Ripple, and Stellar. Don't care if it's Sunday night in New York or Tuesday morning in Bangkok. Settlements happen in seconds globally. 2. Compliance, ready infrastructure. Both networks are designed with regulatory integration in mind. KYC, AML, audit trails. They're not bolted on. They're native. This is why governments and financial institutions trust them. You can't scale payments at the sovereign level without compliance, and Ripple and Stellar already have it. 3. On-chain liquidity and FX optimization. Ripple's ODL removes the need for Nostrovastro accounts by sourcing liquidity in real time via XRP. That's tens of billions in dormant capital that can now be freed. Stellar's AMM capabilities and stablecoin support make it a powerful FX tool for grassroots payments and tokenized fiat. Active global partnerships, not promises. Let's not overlook this. Both networks are actively partnered with payment giants, not just writing UPUs for PR. Ripple's enterprise base includes banks, remittance firms, and now a prime broker. Stellar's ecosystem includes Circle, IBM, MoneyGram, Flutterwave, and even national governments. These are not speculative ecosystems. These are funked